If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hi, friends, and welcome to an episode of RHOBH Therapist, but not just any episode. It's M&M Hour with our dear friend Mandy Slutsker. Hi, Mandy.
Hello from sunny Florida.
I know. Mandy is fresh from Florida, fresh as a daisy. Just flew into Florida. We had planned to record yesterday, and then my niece's health issues took that over, and so we pivoted. And Mandy was so gracious to be flexible, and now she's in Florida, and I'm so jelly. How's the weather down there?
It's so nice. It's like 86 right now. I have no idea why I'm wearing a sweatshirt. I've just been wearing a sweatshirt since the plane.
And not just any sweatshirt. For people who aren't watching the video, let them know what you're wearing.
It's my Send It to Daryl sweatshirt. It's the most comfortable sweatshirt I have ever worn. Shout out to Lala Kent for having just really good merchandise.
Yeah, because, sometimes you'll buy merch and it's just like not good. It's like the quality is really lacking, but that it's very attractive. And now knowing that it's a good quality, maybe is she still selling them? I wonder.
I have no idea. I got it during kind of the height of Scandival, and I would wear it and people would like actually comment on it, which was so funny. Like I was wearing it at a farmer's market near my brother's house in Minneapolis, and someone was like, "Send it to Daryl."
Well, it's such a good way to like call out to fellow Bravoholics, like hoo-hoo, hoo-hoo.
Close your legs to married men.
Exactly. And so speaking of that, that's a good intro. So today what Mandy and I talked about literally 5 minutes ago, because that's what I love about you and I. We're just so chill. We're like, what do you want to cover? What do you want to cover? And it just ends up working out flawlessly. So I'm recording first. So for part one of this podcast, I'm going to cover Summer House and a little bit of Atlanta. And then that's going to lead into Mandy's episode where we're going to talk more specifics of Atlanta and Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Now, for those listening, we are pre-recording this due to our insane schedule. So unfortunately, the Southern Charm reunion is tonight and we're recording before. So unfortunately, people are going to be like, damn it.
We can, we'll deal with that next week.
That's right.
I'm sure there'll be more than enough to cover. And I believe it's a 2-part reunion. But I am really interested to see like everyone being afraid of Craig and not to jump too quickly into Summer House. But he did say something this week that was shocking to me, where him and Kyle, when they were making up, he said, I was pretty bummed because like I don't have that many friends and you're one of my friends. So when I found out that you were like really mad at me, that was hard. And I'm thinking, what do you mean you don't have that many friends? Like, is he one of those boyfriends that's just so into their girlfriend that doesn't have his own thing going on? Or maybe it's that his really good guy friends are all hardcore partiers and he just doesn't fit in with that anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. And let's listen, that's a great transition because let's just get into it. Because honestly, Summer House, I was like, we could probably talk about this for an hour because it was such an intense episode. In every, like, most episodes, there'll be like, Carl or Ciara or something, but it was like everyone was popping off with their own stuff in this episode. And so let's get into it and let's talk about that. What was interesting, though, about that, I interpreted as he is only friends with his Summer House or the Southern Charm people. Like, I get the sense that Craig's life is very insular and he doesn't have, like, he has his, like the King Baby crew, Peter Pan crew. But outside of that, and not that Kyle's any better, although I did appreciate his apology. His apology really seemed like genuine and sincere. But to your point, that was my interpretation, that it's like he doesn't have people outside of his insular Charleston group, which is
There's
also
like
pretty
a
sad.
couple. Like there's Jerry, I think, who helps run his business, who I don't know if he lives in DC anymore, but did live in DC. That's how I knew who his like best friend was.
Right.
And then Corey, who was on Winter House, and Summer House also, maybe, I can't remember, but Corey was also a very good friend of Craig's. And so those are like two other people. But again, you know, I don't know much about Jerry, but Corey was quite a partier. I mean, like hardcore. And so if Craig is wanting to be more of a homebody, I don't know that he's found his niche, and maybe he is, and maybe he, pushes people away by his anger outbursts.
Well, so let's talk about that, because the episode starts with the end of Paige and Craig's, what I guess if you could call it a conversation, because clearly the cracks are so abundantly clear. And it's so funny because we're seeing it from Southern Charm perspective and Summer House perspective. And one thing I talked about on my podcast last week is that I feel like it's a tale of two cities, a tale of two cultures, a tale of two differences in a more youthful culture at Summer House focused on entrepreneurial stuff. And then on Southern Charm, it's a little bit more antiquated. And that matters, right? Like our environment matters and who we're surrounded by matters. But so Paige starts by saying that she was getting seasick. I mean, she just could not be telling him any more clearly that she's over him. Like, I was like, sir, how are you blindsided? But I mean, I understand it, because when you literally have your denial and minimization and you have your head in the sand, you're not going to see anything that's happening. So, but what to the point that you initially made, watching how Craig resolves conflict was so wild to me, right? Because it was like he avoided until he could avoid no longer. But then he still did. Like he got out of the boat. He went somewhere. Kyle is just
sitting there. And Craig's like eating chips in Paige's room. I'm like, what are you doing? Just go have the damn conversation.
And especially with how the conversation resolved, it was like, okay, so picture if this is how Craig deals with issues and solves problems, you can see how he has a ton of problems in his life, because you love this person, right? You want to be friends, you want to make up, but you're avoiding this conversation, leaving him in the boat, which everyone just watched Kyle just sit there while Craig went around and ate chips in Paige's room and drank and did all these things. And so it's just wild to me that in and of itself, I was like, this is why he has so many problems.
Yeah. The thing that was really sad, and I don't remember when she said it, I don't know if it was on Summer House but she basically said, like, I'm going on tour and like he can come with me. Like you can come to any city. We can do our back and forth just like while I'm on tour. Right. And I'll be on stage and I'll be preparing, but like we'll be sharing a bed together. We'll be spending time together. We'll be going to dinner together, but for him, the idea of having it be an imbalanced relationship where the woman and her career is number one, and he is the supportive role to her career, is something that I think he's just not familiar with and not comfortable with. And most men are not comfortable with. We've seen it time and time again. Women who have really strong careers, including in Hollywood, husbands end up cheating on like the most gorgeous, perfect, amazing people because they can't handle that their wife is more famous, makes more money, has more talent, whatever it is. And it's sad, and it's sad. Like a lot of women will move for a husband's job, but what about, a man moving for their wife's job? Why do we have to, why do women have to be the one to give up things? And I think Paige was, very much into what she's doing right now. And it's not like this was like a super long tour. This isn't like the Eras tour. This is a 3-month situation here. And if freaking Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce can handle, well, he is playing professional football all over the country, and she is traveling the world doing a 4-hour show every multiple days, and they can make it work. Like, you can fucking make it work.
I mean, of course. And like, one thing I love about Paige is she's just so funny. She was like, it's not like I'm going to war. And I cackled because I was like, you are so correct. Like, you are so right. It's a short tour. It's in the United States. He can come. All of the things you just said. But what really was wild is throughout these episodes, we kept getting these Easter eggs. And it was later in the episode when Paige was talking to Ciara. And it was also a wild night for like, these people are talking about someone and then the person comes and you're like, oh shit.
Like over and over. Yeah.
And over. It was like too much to just be coincidental. It was so wild. And so she's talking with Ciara, who clearly Ciara has already given her opinions on this. She was super clear about that. But what Paige said, for those who didn't catch it, is that essentially she feels Craig is her biggest hater. And that off camera, behind the scenes, he said to her, and I have this written here, but the gist of it was he felt uncomfortable saying on camera or making it a thing that her career was bumping and his was not. And so he felt some kind of way, I'm guessing jealous, insecure, right? Not confident. He's probably feeling submissive, which is not a Paige issue. It's a Craig issue. Mm-hmm. Because do you know what I believe to be true? Is if this man was like, that's my woman. I am so proud of you. Like if he just was, like you said, like how women are supposed to and were trained to support men because of misogyny. Well, men need to do the same thing for women. Craig, in my opinion, fumbled the ball here. He fumbled it.
All he had to do was be supportive. The thing is that he also deserves to have his needs met. And if he was really, interested in settling down and having children, which he has been for a while, and she can't give him specifics, she can't say like, yes, in a couple years, or yes, at this time I'll be ready. She's like, I don't know if I'll ever be ready. Like, I'm just not, I just know I'm not there now. And that's not good enough for him. And he should have recognized that for himself and had the wherewithal to be like, wow, I love this woman, but we're not in the same space. And I've said this like 100 times, but I can't stand that he keeps on being like, love is enough. They're saying like love wasn't enough. Love is enough if you make it work. I'm like, well, love is enough if you get what you want.
Right. And I just feel that, listen, your point is so important in terms of Craig's feelings matter, his needs matter.
Yeah.
But I just can't help but feel that he is such a part of his own issue and he just does not want to see it. And the problem is because when we have our heads in the sand and we are in denial and minimization, we're not going to see anything that's around us, right? Whether it's a issue with a significant other, a friend, or whatever. And I think Craig has his feet, like, I think he's just unhappy and he was looking at Paige to help him feel some kind of way, like, I'm on track, right, to get this family, or I'm in a loving relationship and this is really great to me. I feel like it was the raw, like, he wanted it to work so badly, but they just wanted different things. But ultimately, I really do believe that if he would have supported Paige more, women feel intoxicated, right? When it comes to our loved ones supporting us and especially, our significant others. And if he could have been more of a cheerleader for her and less, because it's really about him. I think he's projecting, right? All that insecurity.
Yeah.
That's
which
the problem.
A lot of men are that way. A lot of women are that way, right? And everything's about her, right? What she wants, when she wants to do it, all of that. So two people like that, with not one willing to compromise. And I think he felt like he was doing more of the compromising, but I think he also had a problem with it because he's a man. And I think maybe if he lived in New York and not in Charleston, and people weren't constantly asking him questions about when are you guys going to get engaged? When are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? Because people don't do that as much in those bigger cities. It's not like those are the biggest milestones that exist in life. There's questions about career. There's other, no one's like keeping like a horse race, like a track, like where are you on this track? And
I think in Charleston they do, though.
They definitely do that in Charleston.
Yeah, I think there is in there.
And I grew up in the Midwest, and a lot of people do that in the Midwest. Like, oh, when you like you have like when are you gonna have a kid? And then people have a kid. And when are you gonna have a second kid? It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. Like calm down, man. Yeah.
You're right. This has nothing to do with you. Why are you bringing this up? But when Craig was out to dinner with all those guys and Patricia, they were almost like giggling, like he doesn't know when he's going to get engaged. He doesn't know because he's not in charge. And, that's funny when a man's not the one wearing the pants. And
that,
just
that right there is what I can't stand. Exactly. Because it's like, okay, they wanted different things. That's all well and good. But there is a misogynistic piece of this that I don't like. And that, to your point, exactly. But I also think Craig is the one who stirred up this fervor with, I'm going to propose next year or by the end of this year. It's like, bro, you put a self-imposed contract on your relationship and you backed yourself into a corner. And now everyone is asking about that. Instead of all he had to say, we're reevaluating things. That was the goal, but life changes and so are we, right? But instead of doing that, I think he has a lot of trouble with wrapping his brain around the reality of things, if I'm being honest. I think that Craig really struggles with
reality.
Okay, I was trying to beat around the bush.
No, like he has the audacity to say that he's sober and hasn't been drinking for 2 years while he's holding a can of alcohol. Like, he's not sober, and using that term is super weird when you're not sober. Like, just say, I haven't had hard liquor, if that's what you haven't had. Just say it.
What I brought up on my podcast last week, because I'm like, here is this man trying to like cry and claim that he is trying not to be an addict while he's still drinking. And it's like, when I said it, people almost didn't realize that it was still happening. They were like, oh, well, maybe it's and I'm like, when he was talking to Austin, it was champagne.
Drinking. But yeah, I mean, that also is cultural. Like, I know some families, like, if you have hard alcohol, like literally they say, oh, that means you're an alcoholic. So it's like beer and wine. And like, that's the people who can handle it. Right.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know, like if it was having such a negative impact on his relationship, on his business, on his life, why not just give it all up?
And that's my point, is I think that he wants to be right and he wants to win all the time. And that is not how life works.
Well,
you can't
Kyle
be right.
Is very similar.
Oh, well, and hello, that's why they're friends, and that's why they fight so much. So let's get into that piece of the conversation, is that and I love that everyone joked about how Craig just left Kyle in the raft. And I'm like, Craig, don't make me feel bad for Kyle, because if you make me feel bad for Kyle, that's a real problem for me. But it was like, I really did see, and I know this is the part of Kyle that people do appreciate and that Amanda appreciates, is he has a very soft side to him. I think the problem with Kyle is he has a lot of emotions, and he feels like that's the end of the world when he's in pain, right? And I'm like, that's such a king baby thing, where it's like, if I'm hurt, everyone else has to be hurt too.
Yeah.
Because the fact of the matter is, it's like, okay, and you're an adult, so deal with it. We all get hurt feelings.
But don't you feel like that's a bit of a society fail? I know people hate when I say stuff like that. Everyone's like, you stand up for the men. I'm like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, like, the fact that he never had to reel in his emotions and learn to regulate them and got this far in society, where he owns a business, he's married, he, is successful, and he never had to figure this out. It just tells you how much, like, we as a society, like, let men get away with.
Sure.
And women just don't have that long of a leash. We just can't throw temper tantrums. We can't yell. We can't, all of those things that he does that are just so toddler-like. And if you don't learn it young, where it's like, actually, honey, no, I know you're upset right now, but, take a minute, take a breath.
Right.
And it was funny when Craig was like, dude, just like, don't react right away. But Craig does the exact same thing.
I know.
So they all do. They all feel like whatever they're feeling, they need to let it out immediately, and they don't have the self-control And that is something that you have to practice. Paige has so much self-control that I am in awe of how much self-control she has as a person. Just
I agree.
how much she withholds, how much she, thinks before she says something or reacts, just how much she puts into it. I don't know that I could do that.
Well, I also have a real problem with super excessive control issues. So to me, I'm like, yeah, that's my life. But no, it's not. It comes a point where it's like it becomes a problem. But for her, it seems like she's making it work. But I do think you're right. We are talking about people who kind of are very black and white, who are, Kyle and Craig are very similar. They're impulsive. They do not know how to manage feelings appropriately. And I don't know why you get hate for that, because I think you're right in terms of it is a society thing where if women do any of the things that those men do, we would be labeled difficult, aggressive, a bitch, right? All of these other things. There are different standards societally for sure. And I think that these men have gotten away with bad behavior for a long time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that I stick up for the men on Bravo because one time I said I think Shep is a good person underneath all the stuff. And I believe that about pretty much most people, right? Yeah. I don't believe people are just bad or good. I don't believe all bad people are just all bad. And I think
even
that
sociopaths have good qualities.
Yeah.
And seriously, some of them do.
I know. And I just wish I think sometimes people watching these shows have experiences with men in their lives and they attribute those experiences to characteristics that they see in the men on these shows. And then they're like, well, I know that kind of guy because I was with that kind of guy. And so then they think they know the person on TV more than they really do. I feel that people felt that way about Tom Sandoval, where it's I guarantee you were not with a Tom Sandoval. There are very few people like Tom Sandoval to exist, in the exact way that he does. He is really unusual as a human being. Truly,
I could write a dissertation for sure on
just
him.
how, how he goes above and beyond to make his friends birthdays and engagements and that kind of what is that about? What is, how he can really make someone feel loved and listened to and heard, but then he's unusual. A lot of people feel like they know a Kyle, they know a Craig, they know a Carl, and they just are so upset at those people that they can't see the glimmers of sometimes when those men maybe aren't in the wrong. You know?
Sure. And I think though that is what I appreciate about you is it is when you work with people, you will start to understand that what most society is led to believe is not true. It's not black and white.
Nothing is.
I'm not joking that I watch, a lot of murder and serial killer stuff, and a lot of sociopaths and serial killers with psychopathology, they have good qualities. Some of them love pets. Not all of them hate pets and torture them. Some of them are wonderful pet owners. They're, humorous or charismatic. And so I think to your point is that we don't know these people on Bravo. I read them for filth all the time, calling them king babies. But in reality, I don't know them until they interact with me. We don't know them.
It's not that deep also. I'm just sharing my thoughts, and I reserve the right to be 100% wrong about absolutely everything I say.
Well, sure. But the problem I think that happens with you and I, Mandy, is people look at us oh, well, you're smart. Or people look at me they put me on a pedestal. Well, me neither. And I'm I cannot even do math. What are you talking about? These are my interpretations are my opinions. I had someone come yell at me in my Instagram comments about how I'm stupid because my interpretation is wrong. And I was I'm not saying I'm spitting facts. My interpretation, do you understand what the word means? It's literal interpretation. So,
yeah, it's you just disagree with me. That's cool.
Yeah, sure. I love disagreeing because that's
too.
What you and I disagree all the time, and that's what facilitates conversation. But to your point,
I'm Jewish. I disagree with myself half the time. There's 3 arguments going on in my own head.
So amazing. I love that.
It's true. So it's just funny when people get really riled up about it because it usually leads to something that's going on in their own lives or something that happened that they're putting like what their experience was, which likely was really awful, onto like this other relationship, such as Amanda and Kyle, or whatever it is with Craig and Paige.
That's called projection and displacement. And if people, I say this all the time, if people learn how often everyone is projecting onto each other, you would learn to take virtually nothing personally. Because the Bravo fans who rage about like Paige and Craig, and it's like everyone plays a role and let's just all be chill maybe. So I agree. I think that it's when we have parasocial relationships, you have to look at like, what is this about for me? Because if you're, for example, so I was just watching Gypsy Rose, like Life After Lockup, and there was this, I know this is a little tangent, but.
Was that the girl who had Munchausen's by proxy?
Yes. Okay. And she had her mother murdered by her boyfriend. And so she's out of jail now and she's pregnant and she has a show on Lifetime. And it's like, again, I could write a dissertation on the show, but there was a social media account who she lives in Louisiana. And they were driving back and forth on like live stream. And I'm like, come on, man. Like you have to be out of your mind to do something like that.
Well, I don't understand. Sorry. What does it mean to be driving back and forth on live stream?
So like she was driving in her car past Gypsy's residence on live streaming on her
like,
phone.
This is where she lives.
This is where this bitch lives. Come kill her. Yeah. And it's like, this woman is pregnant. She's freshly out of jail. She is completely like, and again, it's nuanced. However,
did I drive by Countess Luann's house in Sag Harbor because my friend knew where it was? Of course I did. Did I actually stop and be creepy? No.
And did you live stream it and tell everyone this is where she lives and come get her?
Yeah, no, I was but I was just thinking of all the amazing things that happened in that house.
Oh my God. Well, see, that's totally appropriate. I would have been right there with you, girl, in that driver's seat. I would have been like, ooh, there's that
I've
house
done some like very questionable drive-bys. Like
of famous people or just regular
no, or like fake famous things. So like I was really into the TV show The Wire. Which was on from like 2003 to 2007. And I got like super into it. I can't remember what year, but like in 2009, me and one of my best friends rented a car and did the like do-it-yourself like wiki tour of The Wire. So it was like hours. Okay. And we decided to do it on a Sunday because the Sunday morning rule, which is in The Wire where they like don't shoot on Sunday mornings.
Right.
And then it was also Easter. And I was like, two Jews rolling through Baltimore or whatever. And we went through the place where like the pit in the first season was supposed to be and that like isn't, and I wanted to like get out and walk around. And my friend was like, I don't know if that's like appropriate. Like we're also like, it's like we're acting like this is like a thing to look at when it's like, this is where these people live. Like it's just, and I was like, oh yeah, that's super weird. Why am I, But I also did the same thing at like the docks, right? When they were at the docks. And I was like, oh, this is where this happened. Or this is where like, what's his name lost his kids when they were getting crab cakes. And, it was just fun. But yeah, there is like a fine line with privacy and, just in general, like thinking that we know people that we watch and we know things about them. But I'm just thinking of like what I share on my podcast and then people feel like they know me because they listen to my podcast. But that's just like a fraction of myself. There's a lot of things I don't share.
Yeah, same here. Absolutely. Even on Patreon, like I do share more personal stuff. But yeah, so I think it's just like, it's tough with Bravo celebrities because I feel like all of the other kind of celebrity areas, Bravo Labs feel, I think, accessible to fans. Because they make themselves accessible, like when they slip into your DMs, slide into your DMs, whatever that saying is,
it doesn't really happen to me. Like everyone else talks about it, unless I like post something cute and then I tag them because I think it's funny or cute and they may enjoy it. Then they're like maybe like haha or like love that, but no one's like really coming in my DMs.
Well, mine are hot, honey. But so finishing off with the Craig and Kyle situation is that what I gathered from that, and again, it was so funny to see the scenario because you're like, how did this happen? But so Craig basically wasn't truthful about it being a done deal with the other spritz company. And that's what Kyle was upset about. And I was like, I knew there had to be something more to this story. But what I appreciated is that Kyle did apologize for calling him a liar, even though this is hot tea. He is. But did you see Paige, Kyle, and Amanda? They last week after the episode, they did an after show where Kyle did again. He said, yeah, I needed to apologize for calling him a liar. And producers asked Paige, should he have apologized for that? And Paige just looked and she was like, no. Mm-mm. And I just thought that was so interesting because I think, going back to your point about the Southern Charm preview for the reunion that we're going to see is that Craig has this level of like simmering rage that doesn't make people feel safe.
That's it. And it's not okay to do that just because you feel that way, right? Just because you have rage doesn't mean you can take it out on people around you. And I guarantee you he took it out on Paige all the time. I guarantee you when he felt less control in his relationship, he took it out more on everyone else. I think Austin bared the brunt of a lot of that stuff. It's just...
I agree. Yeah, I mean, he is. But it is unfortunate because the thing is, none of these guys are bad people, but you're fucking up and the call's coming from inside the house and you want to blame Paige and you want to blame the Bravo audience and you want to blame Kyle. But all of these men, you have to be accountable to you, right? And that's again where we come back to the societal thing where it's like, why is this never their problem? Like women, we take on our problems plus theirs and our neighbors and our coworkers and everyone else's. But the men are like, no, I'm not doing that. And it's like, well, you're not special. Why?
I just think, I think he should have gone to Kyle and been like, hey, just so you know, I was approached by this other company to do this thing, wanted to get your blessing. And if Kyle was like, actually, I would love for you to do that for my company, like, what are the parameters of your offer? Like, let me see if I can make a counter offer. And he actually like spends time and effort putting something like that together only for Craig to be like, yeah, no, I mean, I kind of already signed kind of a thing.
Exactly.
That's shitty and not honest. And I think that other people should be able to invest in other spritz and whatever companies. Like, I don't think he owns alcoholic beverages, but it is a competitor product. And I do think giving a heads up is kind of the right thing to do for a friend. I would do
Kyle
that for any product, if I was going to start, a candle company and someone else was confiding to me that they were interested in a candle company, like you come forward and you're like, hey, let me just like put my chips on the table, let you know where I'm at. Because just being forthcoming is like 95% of the battle. That's all he wanted.
And I think that, what Kyle said, and I will give him credit for this. He said, I'm almost 42. I need to learn how to stop letting my emotions, my impulses take the best of me. He offered a sincere apology. And then Craig said, this was what's so fascinating to me. Craig said, I didn't know how to fix it and I felt awkward. That's avoidance. Right? So I don't know how to fix this. I don't have control over this. So I'm just going to avoid it. That is a terrible strategy for conflict. It's going to continue to lead him to have problems. Which is, unfortunate. But, hearing Craig say that he was bummed, it upset Kyle. Well, why not just say that like months ago? The whole thing, it does seem just very bizarre that Craig for sure gets in his own way. And if I'm looking at Craig and Kyle here, I'm saying Kyle was the most mature one, which is like, yikes.
Kyle was more mature with Craig, but was way more immature with Paige. Like, he should not have taken it out at Paige. It has nothing to do with Paige. Like, Craig makes his own business decisions. He makes his own decisions as a person. Hannah makes her own decisions as a person, what she says in a podcast, what she doesn't. Like, it's not fair to hold Paige to what other people do. She's not them.
Well, of course. But I think that's another thing that men love to do, which is hold people accountable for things that they're just unhappy about that aren't theirs to own. It's just kind of like on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, everyone wants to point fingers. And then it's like, well, just because they did the same thing doesn't mean it's okay for you to also act like an asshole. that's what emotional maturity says, right? It says like, I don't care how someone's coming at me. It's not okay for me to just unravel on someone because they're being a jerk. Like, but whatever. So one thing though I want to move on to, because we've chatted about this already for like a half hour, but Carl's
Wait, the whole thing was so funny how he met her through her parents and then her parents picked her up. Like, how old is she? Like, is she like 22?
So many questions, Mandy. I'm like, this woman wants to do magic. She pulled out
cool.
a magic.
Loved that. I loved that. I was like, that's the things I loved about Tom Sandoval. I love people doing weird shit. I want to learn. You have an interesting hobby? Tell me all about it.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. I think I was with you until she pulled out the deck of cards. And then I was like, not here. I don't know.
But
maybe.
like, that's awkward, but like Carl's awkward. Like, I don't know. I thought I could
he's so awkward.
Right. And it's like, as long as they're happy, like she's not doing anything malicious. Maybe she's just awkward too. I mean, she was super awkward doing the worm and he's just like sitting there and she's like, the whole thing was just so odd.
So odd.
They seem kind of oddly matched-ish because they are such like string beans of humans. Which
Literally?
is like a body type that's just like not like the most common. So to like see two people that are like that tall and that thin.
And that awkward, I'm like, it's a match made in heaven.
I don't know. I thought it was a good match.
Can I tell you? So I watched Watch What Happens Live today. And Jesse and Imrul were on because we're going to get to the Jesse of it all. Don't you worry. Holy moly. But Jesse and Imrul were on. And Imrul said that her name, I think, was Lily.
Yeah, Lil.
Lily. Lil was making eyes at him.
Okay, he said that too. I believe Imrul is the kind of guy that thinks every woman is making eyes at him. And until proven otherwise, like, I don't believe him.
Okay, well, I have more tea. Jesse said that they later found out, meaning they being Carl, that she was in a lot of other Bravo Lab men's DMs. Now, I don't know.
That's shady.
Right. I don't know how many a lot is, but let's say it seemed like she was really, maybe happy to be in a limelight. I don't know. But then it's like, why are your parents picking you up? And if you're into like other people's DMs, why are you having Carl meet your parents? It was just so bizarre.
Yeah, maybe they all are huge Bravo fans and just like the idea of the whole thing is very exciting for the whole family. I don't know. But the Imrul of it all, I don't know him well enough to trust him on anything. I really just don't. And what we know about him is mainly that he just likes to have sex. And I wish there was a little bit more time, or maybe they decided to show more of his conversations about being undocumented in this country and whatever that experience was, and then getting married to get citizenship and, the difference culturally between him and his parents and, how he felt suffocated by his culture and is rebelling against it. And does he think he ever will find some sort of like homeostasis in that where he's like not fully this like, devout Muslim, but maybe not like having sex with multiple chicks every night. Like, is, that kind of stuff I'd be way more interested in hearing conversations about. But I really feel like we don't know him. And I'm like, who are these girls? Is he paying them? Like that was a question I had when there's two girls hanging out and Jesse comes in. Like, how many people are comfortable having a person? Like, usually, like, I think I really don't know a lot about group sex, but what I do know about people that engage in like sex parties and stuff is like there is a lot of consent. Like, and
consent
a lot of
primary.
conversations, like multiple conversations about consent at many different parts of that process, right?
1,000%.
So having people in a room and having someone come in that room unprepared felt like, or without the other two knowing, felt like a consent breaking thing that I think only, in my opinion, and I could be completely wrong, would happen if you're paying and then you get to call the shots, which feels different. That was something I was thinking about. It just felt really odd that Jesse was like, wow, you have 2 chicks? Like, I want to go see them. And not just see them, but like 37 minutes went by.
Okay. So okay. So what we're going to let you all know, if you haven't watched it, is that Jesse finds out that Imrul is with, and by the way, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of he's such a rich character in terms of everything you just said. There is so much more to him than sex and like the orgy monster, whatever they call him. Because like you're saying, as long as it's consent, everyone is a consenting adult and there are conversations, do you. Threesomes, foursomes, who cares? As long as everyone's safe and giving consent. But so Jesse walks in this room, right? And then it cuts to 37 minutes later. So he's in this room for 37 minutes and you're like, that's a lot. He's holding something in his hand. I thought initially maybe it was a condom, but then it was his socks because production jumped in and he tried to lie. And they were like, no, you were in there for 37 minutes and you had your socks on when you went in and you had them off when you left. But here's to your point, Mandy, the one really interesting piece that I felt odd about was that Imrul kept saying on Watch What Happens Live, I told her to do it. And it's like, sir, you told her to lick his disgusting toe, which, by the way, probably had black plague on it. I mean, his feet.
Yersinia pestis.
Yeah.
Exactly. Official name of the plague, in case people were wondering.
Mandy is like, I love that about you. I'm like, oh my God, I love that, dropping that knowledge. But it's like, his feet couldn't have been more disgusting. He was a barefoot outside the whole time. Then he goes to a bar with like probably flip-flops. And so it's like, why would anyone debase themselves to do that, number one? Because to me, that was I was like, I hope she was okay, like didn't get strep throat or whatever you get from the bottom of this man's foot. But number two, I didn't like how Imrul was like, well, it was my idea. I told her to. And it's like, so you told her to. What kind of dynamic is that in, I agree with you. Something, I don't know.
It felt weird. It felt
weird. It felt uncomfortable.
And like, how is he getting women like every single, like, I don't know. Something just feels off.
Oh, that, I just think he is a very suave, charismatic guy. So I was watching him intently on Watch What Happens Live, and he does this kind of, like Zoolander look. He's just like, and so I think that he knows he's attractive. Now that he's on Summer House, I think he's using that to get people to come back to the house. Because, I mean,
yeah, but none of them have signed any consent forms. Like, it's not, they're not getting anything from being in the house.
Yeah, but listen, you could be right. I don't know. I didn't get that vibe, but I get the vibe from him that he is just a very charismatic, and I'm gonna say I definitely do see some narcissistic traits and tendencies. But again, we all have that. It's just how much. I think he thinks a lot of himself. And I can't tell, sometimes people who think a lot of themselves, they really have this kind of grandiose sense of themselves that's not accurate, or it comes from a place of overcorrecting because they're really not super confident.
I actually think it could be the latter. And it does seem to me at this point, like just how much he's doing it. He could do this at his own apartment. He's only in this house a couple times a week for a couple of months. The fact that he's like, not tempering how often he's bringing people home, to me tells me that he can't. Like, he doesn't have the ability to stop. And I wonder whether or not there's an addiction there. I mean, it just feels very compulsive. Like, I have to go out. I have to find someone. They have to come home. We have to do this. And then they leave. And they have to leave. Like, and then I have to do push-ups in the morning. Like, it just feels like this pattern that's, like, could you stop?
That's a great question. And honestly, I had the same thought because when I worked in inpatient rehab, I worked with people who had, there's a group, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, and, good rehabilitation programs. They don't just work on the substance, they work on, unhealthy, because most people in addiction and recovery have had unhealthy relationships, right? Codependence, using sex as a form of, a drug is a drug is a drug, and sex can make your brain feel great. And so for me, I had those questions too, where how much is he in control of this and how much is it in control of him? I can't judge because this is all we know about him. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because in a preview for the next episode, we see Ciara is angry because he's bringing these random women to their house and it's making her feel uncomfortable, which is always, listen, if that's what he wants to do at his house, that's fine. But when you have roommates, you have to be respectful, right, of that common space. And so I'm really going to be interested to unravel this thread a little bit to see, is this like an overcorrection because of how he was raised and, meant to believe that sex was bad. And now it's like a way overreaction, which humans do that, right? We tend to overcorrect. So, but we see that Jesse is the entire episode just behaving like such a douche. I don't know if you saw something different, but I was like...
No, if I would call it a douche. I think he was flirting with Ciara the entire episode. And I think the douchey thing was that he was professing his love to Lexi at the same time, but his actions weren't matching. That's what I thought the issue was, which will catch up with him, and it will upset both of them. And I think it was really interesting to hear him talk to Craig and say, you're at this party with all these hot women and you don't care? When do you stop caring? And then Craig's like, when you find someone that you wouldn't want to cheat on your girlfriend, when you get to be with someone and the only thing you want to do is spend all your time with them, then then the other people don't matter. And I don't think Jesse's ever had that because he literally cannot imagine it. It's literally, he sounds like someone who just hasn't had that happen yet. And so
I think it's because he has a commitment phobia. I think he does this. This is the second year now we've seen him do this to girls where you're like, he wants to fall in love. He wants to have that intoxicating feeling. Speaking of sex and love addiction, right? And relationships, it's like you can tell he gets this feeling by being in love or having that new budded romance. But then on in the show and on Watch What Happens Live, he did admit that it was scaring him. And it's but you self-created this.
No, it reminds me so much of Austin because Austin would also get in these situations where he would, pine after a woman and they would give in and they would be with him and then he would freak out. And he says that he's in therapy and he's working on that. And a lot of it he believes might be related to the death of his sister when he was very young. I wonder how much of Jesse's is related to being a 2-time cancer survivor and maybe thinking that he's not going to make it. And the idea of the future is really scary because he never contemplated that he would have one. And I don't know.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor and I've never behaved like that because but I'm a woman who's carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. So, I don't get the privilege of that. But listen, I absolutely think that's correct. I call this, I said it on my Instagram, in the cancer fam community, and there's a huge community of us, we call it the post-cancer hoe phase. Because it doesn't matter how old you are. You're like, oh shit, my body's just been invaded. I've survived something. Let me, and that's what happens, especially with young people. But my issue with Jesse is that he's lying to everybody. And it's he lied to West, right? So he's talking to Amanda and Craig about maybe wanting to be with Ciara. And honestly, Ciara needs to go to school to pick better men because I'm like, this is West 2.0. And I truly believe that Jesse and West are their best friends because they're very similar people. They are people who took these women who said that they were intentional and just kept going and kept going and kept going until they could break through. They broke through and then were like, oh, wait, I'm scared. Oh my gosh, what did I do? And then it's oh my God, I can't fall into all these other vaginas tonight. What a disaster. It's dude, come on, man. I thought it was so gross and I really didn't like any of it. And I didn't understand how Ciara also is she clearly has a type. Right? Austin, West, Jesse. she needs to understand, why are you picking these men?
I think she's working on that. I mean, she has talked around, but not about entirely her family. And she did mention earlier this season that she was having some pretty big issues with her family, and that she was maybe not going to be with them for the holidays, and that West was the only person she spoke to about that. Like, they had a very deep connection. And I think she felt violated that he like knew so much about her and walked away, and, you know, all of that. Maybe it has something to do with her dad. I mean, she has to work on that too.
Sure.
But these guys are, West was giving her every indication that he was into her, that he wanted to date her. And it went on for a lot longer. Yeah, multiple times.
Do you remember that?
They went to weddings together.
Right. So it's like, and that's what Jesse said on Watch What Happens Live too. They asked him about like, do you think West did anything wrong? And he was like, yeah, she probably shouldn't have met his parents. But what I'm saying is, it's like, Jesse went to dinner with Lexi's parents, right? So it's like, you both are choosing to integrate with these people who are saying they're intentional, and then to get what you're looking for, and then to get scared and take a step back. Well, I'm telling you, that's bullshit. It's not okay. And I do understand why Ciara felt used, because I said on my podcast last week that I felt he had newbie jitters and she was a comfort to him, right? In fact, since I'm born and raised in Chicago, one of them made a reference that I think it was Jesse. He said Jesse, West, and Ciara last year were like Pippen, Jordan, and Rodman.
Yeah.
But what I love that producers did, by the way,
they made her Jordan. That was the best part.
I was like,
was not lost on me.
Production for the freaking win. The other two were Pippen and Rodman. And I grew up so I was born in 81, and I was in junior high when the Bulls were like, if you didn't have a Bulls starter jacket, you were no one in my school. And it was like, between them being so huge and the Bears won a Super Bowl in 85. And so Chicago sports lore, I was just like, they got it so right. Ciara is so our
true.
Jordan.
No, that is so true. All of it's just been very like interesting to watch. I think that part of the reason that Ciara feels that West used her, and I don't think this was intentional, but he got the audience to fall in love with him partially by how sweet he was being with her. And then once he got all of that female attention, he no longer wanted to be with her so that he could explore all of that female attention, which he only got because of his relationship with her. And this is when it would be helpful for her to explain that to him, because if it was explained that way, I don't know that he would be so against. Like, I'd be like, oh, because when you just say used, he's assuming that it was intent, and he had an intent to use her to get somewhere. And that was not what his intention was. And
but it was his impact.
Right. But you sometimes have to explain the impact. I guess in general.
Well, but here's the thing, Mandy. He still said, not to cut you off, he said, because I want to see what you think of this quote. He said when he was throwing his tantrum, West, he thought the relationship was cute and fun.
Oh,
Sir,
yeah, that's bullshit.
Sir, you thought the relationship was cute and fun. You took her to weddings. You had her meet your family. So it's like, these women are telling these men, this is my issue. And they're just like, well, I'm going to do what I want. And to more of the point is that when West was having his little temper tantrum with Amanda, did you notice he kept looking at the camera?
No, but I don't notice much. In general.
I had that shit like a hawk. He was out talking to Amanda, but it felt like to me he was having this temper tantrum about how, well, I thought our relationship was cute and fun, and I'm just, he was mad because he's like, I've been nice and cordial and kind, and I couldn't be kinder, and now she's saying that I used her. Bro, number one, that's her feeling. Number two, if that wasn't your intent, that was the impact. And number three, his behavior as he's doing this, and he keeps looking up at the camera because it's like it's mounted on the, it's like one of those ones that's mounted on the outside of the house. And he kept looking up at it. And I personally feel he's not mad really about Ciara. He's mad about how she's making him look on TV.
I think that's part of it. I also think it just doesn't align with his views of himself. He thinks of himself as a good guy. And he, it wasn't a good guy to her in her mind. And he can't wrap his head around that. It's not like he cheated on her. It's not like he, lied. Like he tried to date her and they did date and they were exclusive and he wasn't seeing other people. And then he wasn't as into it. And from his perspective, what did he do that was so terrible? He tried to date her, and then when he wasn't into it, he ended it. Kind of like how Paige, once she wasn't into it, she ended it. And people have a right to leave relationships.
For sure.
And it almost felt like unless he married Ciara, that there was no way that he could get out of this without every woman coming after him. And I personally don't feel in the situation between the two of them that he was 100% at fault. I think.
Oh, sure. She played a role too. I agree with that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that she set a standard, but then she let it get trampled. And she allowed that too. So then maybe he's thinking maybe this isn't the standard anymore. I do think that she has gone pretty hard on him for a while. And I can see how after a long period of time, it could break him. And I don't think that makes him a shitty person or not someone that's serious, or I don't know. I think that he's getting a lot more slack, and we've just seen guys do so much worse on these shows. And I don't know that he did anything that terrible. I think we should be giving a lot more shit to Craig over the stuff we're finding out about Paige. I think we should be giving a lot more shit to Jesse. Actually,
Jesse is on my absolute shit list,
because he's just saying things that are not true to people. Whereas West, was, I think, pursuing Ciara in good faith. I think he really did, which is why it's hard to be called I was being used. I don't think he sees it from that perspective at all. I don't think he saw anything coming when it came to what it meant to be a guy on Bravo and the amount of attention. All of it, I just think people gave him no grace. It was they loved him and then they hated him and there was no in between. And maybe we shouldn't have loved him as much, but I don't think we need to hate him as much either.
Well, I agree with you that the fervor around any of these people, it's too much. People who put him on a pedestal, I'm you're doing that and you don't even know him. So maybe don't do that. But Bravo
Joel
fans love
Booster
to.
said, I haven't loved a white guy this much since Bernie Sanders.
There you go. Right? But so it's we idealize people and then we devalue them. They do one thing wrong and then you're you're the devil.
I think that's how I feel the audience did, which feels a little bit is that really him or is that us?
Sure. And I think
that make sense?
It makes so much sense. I think there's some of it that's us. There's most of it that's him, and there's some of it that's Ciara.
But
right?
he should bring all this energy to the conversations when she talks to him. That he goes mute when she talks to him. And so how is she supposed to know what he thinks and feels? And I think he's going mute because he's I don't want to say the wrong thing and hurt her because I care about her. And and I think
that
he's
becomes
also
a problem.
It does, but that's the way that he handles things, and he has to learn that that's not a good way to handle things. Not on reality TV and not in real life.
I think I should do a charm school, but for king babies, a king baby school. Dude, I would whip these guys up really quick. Oh, wait. So one last thing, though, I thought was so interesting was how, so at the end of the episode, Jesse was FaceTiming with Lexi, and it was so wild how he was just so we watched Jesse tell West and Amanda and everyone different bits of information, and none of them are the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he comes out at the end of the episode and he tries to say, oh, well, Lexi is better than any foursome. But it's you knew that this was going to come back to haunt you. And he did what I believe West was doing, which is just keeping silent and trying to make people believe that it was different than it actually was. Because on Watch What Happens Live, Andy asked him, if Lexi had done that. And at first, Jesse tried to give this bullshit answer saying oh, well, if it was just all in good fun. And Andy was like, really? And he goes, okay, I probably would have been upset. And it's like, right. You know what a great rule of thumb is, guys? Try to treat the people that you're involved with like they're human and they have feelings, and treat them like you might also want to be treated.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't raised to have to care about others' feelings or consider other feelings. So particularly men. So like all of a sudden when they have to care about someone else's feelings, like a wife or children, it's like, wait, what? My needs aren't the first top thing, and what I want to do isn't everything. And it's just like, whereas women like always have to we've been taught to consider other people's feelings from childhood.
Oh, women are conditioned for sure.
We've been conditioned. And it's always so shocking. Like we're just, I think in general, more emotionally like regulated because we've been taught that we have to be.
Yeah, because when we go out into the world and we go to work and we do the same things that men do, we get labeled as problematic, or, like I get labeled as a problematic patient because I have a loud ass voice, and I fire doctors. I'm like, no, you're terrible. You're fired. So, you can paint me whatever you want to paint myself, but I'm not going to have my boundaries trampled on. And I think that Ciara, I appreciate what you said too, because of course, all of our behavior comes from something. And I think that even though she is one of the most beautiful, good-hearted, she's just like a golden angel of a person, I feel.
Yeah.
And it opens herself up to being her. And yeah, I would love to know more about her story. But I do hope she realizes her value and realizes that Jesse is worse than West. But, so before we wrap up, one last thing I did want to point out is how they showed Lindsay kind of saging, right?
Oh, yes, that was so funny when she's like, "This kind of smells like weed."
She's like, "Is it sage?" And I'm like, everyone's like, "Give me the weed."
She's so funny. I love her this vibe.
Yeah, I just love her. Like, she said she got rid of the bad vibes couch. She got rid of like, it's so amazing that, it was like this home was this den of just like anger and arguments. And now she's like having a sweet little girl there. And, it's just lovely to see for her. But before it cut to her doing that, Carl said to Lily about how she got pregnant in the bed that I paid for. And I was like, see, this is why people don't like you, Carl. Like, what kind of a thing is that to say? And also, do you remember how to flirt? Because this ain't it.
I think that's like what he said is like how a lot of men think. Like, I bought that bed and then she was like deflowered in it. Like, which is like a thing against me. I don't know. It's so strange, but I have a feeling like other guys hearing that would be like, oh, that is like so messed up. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I do. Absolutely.
But I'm sure something that would like never go through my head if I bought a bed.
Yeah.
And like my ex got it in like, that's just like, I don't know.
It was weird for him after behaving how he's behaved, trying to be cool about things and whatever. It's like, okay, so there's your role, right, Carl? Like there's your shit where it's like, that's not something you say on camera. Lindsay's going to have something to say about that, number one. You're mic'd, number two. And number three, who gives a shit if you bought the bed? Like, you didn't even want to be with her anyway. Like, why are you... Move on. You know what I mean? It's so weird to me.
I think in his mind, I think he didn't call off the wedding. He tried to have a very serious conversation, and she couldn't have that conversation to figure out how to fix what was wrong with them. And she took it as him calling off the wedding, which it kind of was, but that wasn't the intention behind it. He then ended up like losing $150,000 because of this. Because he was the one that basically made the call. She was like, you handle all of the financial stuff with it. And then I think he also, basically was paying rent for her to live there and like all of these other things that right. I think he is then holding on to.
Sure, but that doesn't give you ownership, and it's just a shitty thing. Yeah. Right. It's a shitty thing to say. It doesn't give you ownership, and it's just like, yeah, you're right. So, of course, we didn't get to talk about Atlanta because we were yapping too much about this, but...
We can talk about that on mine.
Yes. So let everyone know, Mandy, where they can go to hear part 2 of this podcast.
Yes. So you can find me at Is This Real Life with Mandy Slutsker. If you go into Spotify or Apple Podcasts and type in Mandy, Mandy, and then Slut, I come up. It will be easy to find me. You can also find me on Instagram at Mandy Slutsker. Thanks,
so
guys.
Please check her out and stay tuned for part 2 of this discussion. Ta-ta for now. Disclaimer. Posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your RHOBH therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast, my opinions, and posts are my own and not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Greyheart Productions, or any other television network. The information in YBT Podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, hear on YBT Podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.